a humble friar in a small Italian monastery. Marked by mysterious wounds. Able to read hearts, heal the sick, and bring countless souls to God. For over 50 years, believers and skeptics alike traveled across continents to meet him. This is the true story of Saint Pius of Pietrelcina, the man the world came to know as Padre Pio, born Francesco Forgione on May 25, 1887, in Pietrelcina, southern Italy. He grew up in a poor farming family, yet rich in faith. From the time he was a child, Francesco experienced visions of Jesus, Mary, and his guardian angel. At 15, he entered the Capuchin Franciscan order, taking the name Pio, after Pope Saint Pius V. Despite fragile health and repeated illness, he pressed on, determined to serve God. In 1916, he was sent to the remote monastery of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotondo. It would remain his home, and the center of worldwide pilgrimage, for the rest of his life. On September 20, 1918, while praying before the crucifix, Padre Pio received the stigmata, wounds mirroring those of Christ's crucifixion. The phenomenon baffled doctors and drew thousands of visitors. The wounds bled but never became infected, and remained for 50 years. Padre Pio became known for reading hearts, miraculous healings, and even bilocation, appearing in 2 places at once. He often spent over 12 hours a day in the confessional, guiding souls to repentance. Yet fame brought trials, accusations, investigations, and restrictions from church authorities. Through it all, he obeyed in silence. In 1956, he founded the House for the Relief of Suffering, a modern hospital for the poor, embodying his deep charity. In his later years, pain and illness intensified. On September 23, 1968, at age 81, Padre Pio quietly passed away. His final words, Jesus, Mary. Thousands attended his funeral. In 2002, Pope John Paul II canonized him as Saint Pius of Pietrelcina. Today, millions visit his shrine, drawn by the faith of a friar who bore the wounds of Christ. Saint Pius of Pietrelcina teaches us that holiness comes through both miracles and suffering, and that every life, no matter how hidden, can radiate the love of God. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more inspiring stories of the saints. After St. Peter was martyred in Rome, the young church faced its first great question: who would take up the fisherman's net and lead the flock? The answer was a man whose name appears in the Bible itself, Saint Linus, the very first to wear the mantle of the papacy after Peter. Little is known of his early life, but tradition tells us Linus was born in Tuscany, Italy. Converted by the preaching of St. Paul, he became a faithful disciple, mentioned in Paul's second letter to Timothy. Eubulus sends greetings to you, as do Pudens, Linus, Claudia, and all the brothers. 2 Timothy 4 verse 21. When St. Peter faced martyrdom around the year 67 AD, the church could not be left without a shepherd. Linus, known for his deep faith and wisdom, was chosen to guide the Christian community. His role as the first successor of St. Peter marked the beginning of an unbroken line of popes lasting nearly 2,000 years. Linus led during a time of persecution under Emperor Nero's successors. Christianity was still illegal, forcing believers to worship in secret. Linus safeguarded the faith, appointed bishops, and, according to ancient tradition, issued one of the earliest church decrees, requiring women to veil their heads during worship. Though details are scarce, tradition holds that Pope Linus was martyred for his faith around the year 76 AD. He was buried near St. Peter in what is now the Vatican necropolis. His name etched into the sacred memory of the Church. St. Linus reminds us that leadership in the Church is not about power, but service, even unto death. From the first days after Christ's resurrection, the papacy has stood as a sign of unity, guiding the faithful through centuries of challenge and change. Thank you for joining us in discovering the life of Saint Linus, Pope and Martyr. If you want to explore more stories of the saints who shaped our faith, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, so you never miss our future videos. In a world marked by captivity and suffering, one figure appeared, not to bribe kings, but to ransom captives with mercy. Who is the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mercy, and how did her compassion ignite a centuries-long mission of sacrifice? Let's discover the faith, hope, and radical love that founded the Mercedarians. medieval Spain faced persistent raids by Moorish forces, Christians were captured, imprisoned, and pressured to renounce their faith. This harsh reality created a profound need for mercy and redemption. Around 1218, Saint Peter Nolasco experienced a vision of the Virgin Mary instructing him to found an order dedicated to freeing Christian captives, an act of mercy rising from divine inspiration. On August 10, 1218, the Order of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mercy was officially established at Barcelona's Cathedral of Santa Eulalia. The Mercedarians lived under the rule of Saint Augustine and made a unique fourth vow, to offer their own lives in exchange for captives, if necessary. Their habit and mission were inspired by a profound Marian spirit, embodying Christ's sacrificial love. From its medieval roots, the Mercedarian order spread across 17 countries, evolving into an international religious family of friars and sisters. It continues today with active communities, schools, missions, and a living legacy of mercy and redemption. In opening her arms to ransom captives, Our Lady of Mercy didn't just inspire one saint, she inspired a movement, a vow, a mission that echoes through centuries. Today, mercy still calls. Will you answer? He never performed grand miracles, never led great movements. And yet, his quiet holiness shook the very walls of his small town. Who was this humble friar who turned silence into a song for God? This is the story of Saint Pacific of San Severino. Welcome back to Saint Stories, where we uncover the lives of those who found holiness in unexpected ways. Today, we journey to 17th century Italy to meet Saint Pacific, Franciscan friar, mystic, and a man who taught that the greatest miracle is patience. Pacific was born Carlo Antonio Davini in 1653 in San Severino, Italy. Orphaned at a young age, he was raised by an uncle who gave him a solid Christian upbringing. As a boy, Carlo had a deep love for prayer and would often slip away to the church when other children played. At 17, Carlo joined the Order of Friars Minor, taking the name Pacific to reflect his longing for peace of heart. He quickly became known not for fiery preaching or grand gestures, but for a quiet spirit and a gentle smile that seemed to draw everyone near. Pacific's life was not without suffering. In his 30s, he developed a painful illness that left him nearly blind, deaf, and crippled. For decades, he could no longer preach or travel, yet he turned this physical cross into an altar of prayer. His cell became a place of counsel, comfort, and encouragement for those who sought him. Though confined, Pacific radiated joy and peace. The townspeople of San Severino often said that just visiting him brought them closer to God. His humility and patience were his greatest sermons. He died in 1721, at the age of 68, and miracles were reported at his tomb soon after. Saint Pacific was canonized in 1839 by Pope Gregory XVI. His feast day is celebrated on September 24th, a reminder that holiness can flourish not in grand achievements, but in faithfully carrying the small cross God gives us. Imagine a young girl in 19th century Poland, who dreams not of wealth or fame, but of dedicating her life entirely to God. In a time of political oppression and spiritual trial, she would rise to become a beacon of prayer, courage, and service. Her name was Columba Rawska, and her legacy still inspires today. Persecution. Blessed Columba was born as Maria Rosa Rawska on May 6, 1858, in Warsaw, Poland, then under Russian occupation. Raised in a devout Catholic family, she grew up in an environment where faith was often tested by the government's anti-Catholic policies. Even as a child, she was drawn to prayer and acts of charity, a quiet foreshadowing of her future vocation. In her youth, Maria felt a strong call to religious life. She entered the Benedictine convent of Perpetual Adoration in Lviv, taking the name Columba. The Benedictine life, steeped in the rhythm of prayer, work, and silence, became the foundation of her spiritual strength. She would later become abbess, guiding her community through turbulent times with gentleness and resolve. As abbess, Blessed Columba was known for her profound Eucharistic devotion and deep compassion for her sisters. She promoted education among the nuns, encouraged care for the poor, and maintained strong moral courage in the face of religious oppression. Her leadership style was one of quiet firmness. She believed holiness was built in the ordinary. Daily faithfulness to God's will. living in a politically volatile Poland, she faced constant pressure from authorities who sought to limit Catholic influence. Yet, blessed Columba's calm resistance and deep trust in Providence preserved the integrity of her monastery. She died in 1929, leaving behind a community strengthened by her witness of prayer and perseverance. The Church recognized her heroic virtues, and she was beatified on June 9, 1991, by Pope John Paul II during his visit to Poland. Today, she is honored as a model of steadfast faith, Eucharistic love, and humble leadership. Blessed Columba Rawska reminds us that holiness is not always lived in dramatic public acts, but in faithful, daily surrender to God. Her life teaches us that prayer can shape history, and quiet courage can protect the faith for generations to come. In a time when proclaiming Christ meant certain death, one fearless bishop carried the light of the gospel into the very heart of Roman Gaul. His name was Saint Firmin of Amiens, a missionary, a bishop, and a martyr whose blood planted the seeds of faith in northern France. But who was this man who dared to challenge the Roman gods, and how did his sacrifice shape the faith of an entire region? Saint Firmin was born in Pamplona, Spain, during the 3rd century. Tradition tells us he was baptized by Saint Anestus, a disciple of Saint Saturninus of Toulouse, both pioneers of Christianity in Gaul. From his youth, Firmin was marked by a burning zeal to bring the good news beyond his homeland. As a young priest, Firmin followed the missionary spirit of his teachers and traveled north into Gaul, a land still dominated by Roman paganism. There, he preached Christ openly, performing miracles and gathering disciples despite the danger of persecution. Recognized for his holiness and leadership, Firmin was consecrated the first bishop of Amiens. Under his care, the Christian community flourished. He ordained priests, baptized converts, and celebrated the Eucharist in secret gatherings, transforming Amiens into a stronghold of faith, but Rome's tolerance for this new religion soon ran out. Firmin was arrested during one of the persecutions. Tradition places it under Emperor Maximian around the year 303 AD. Refusing to renounce Christ, he was cruelly imprisoned, tortured, and finally beheaded in Amiens. His courage inspired countless believers, proving once again that the blood of martyrs is the seed of the Church. Centuries later, the faithful of Amiens built a magnificent cathedral, the largest in France, dedicated to Our Lady but forever tied to the memory of their first shepherd, Saint Firmin. His relics are still venerated today, and his name lives on as a symbol of missionary zeal and unshakable faith. Saint Firmin reminds us that faith is not meant to be hidden but shared, even at the cost of our lives. His story is not just about one man's martyrdom, it is about the triumph of the gospel in a world of opposition. May his courage inspire us to be fearless witnesses of Christ today. Have you ever heard of the doctors who healed without charging a single coin, men whose skill in medicine brought both physical cures and spiritual conversions? Their story does not end in hospitals or villages, but in the arena of martyrdom. These are the wonder-working brothers, Saints Cosmas and Damian. In the days when the Roman Empire still trembled with persecution against Christians, two brothers, skilled in the art of healing, became living witnesses of Christ. Their names, Cosmas and Damian, still echo in the prayers of the Church more than 17 centuries later. Born in Arabia in the 3rd century, Cosmas and Damian studied medicine with great dedication. But unlike most physicians of their time, they treated the sick without seeking payment. For this, they became known as the Anargyroa, the silverless or unmercenary physicians. To them, healing was not a business, but a ministry. Each remedy, each cure, was an act of charity and a reflection of Christ, the divine physician. As their fame spread throughout Syria and Cilicia, people marveled not only at their skill but at their faith. They proclaimed Christ boldly, teaching that the true source of healing was not herbs or instruments, but the Creator of body and soul. Their medical practice became a hidden mission field, where healing the sick opened hearts to the gospel, but the empire was no friend to Christians. Under Emperor Diocletian, a fierce wave of persecution swept across the land. The brothers were arrested and brought before Lysias, the governor. When commanded to renounce Christ, they refused. No torture could shake their faith. They were scourged, burned, chained, and yet miraculously survived many torments. At last, around the year 303, they were beheaded, giving their lives for the faith they had so boldly lived. The story of Cosmas and Damian did not end with their martyrdom. Countless miracles were reported at their tomb in Cyrrhus, Syria. Pilgrims came from all corners of the empire, seeking cures through their intercession. Churches were dedicated to them in Rome and Constantinople. To this day, they are invoked as patrons of doctors, surgeons, pharmacists, and all those in the healing professions. Saints Cosmas and Damian remind us that true healing is not bought with silver or gold, but given freely out of love. Their lives challenge us to see our gifts, not as possessions for profit, but as instruments for service, charity, and faith. If you were inspired by the stories of these remarkable saints, subscribe to our channel for more stories of saints who changed the world with their courage and faith. And remember, the greatest medicine of all is love rooted in Christ. Thank you for watching, and may all saints intercede for you today.